Sign the papers, you old bat, or we'll have you declared incompetent by Friday. My son Marcus slammed the manila folder onto my kitchen table, so hard the sugar bowl jumped. Coffee splashed from my cup onto the yellowed documents, and I watched the brown stain spread across what looked like legal forms. The bitter smell of burnt coffee mixed with the sharp scent of his expensive cologne. The same cologne his father wore when he left me 30 years ago. My daughter Sarah stood behind him like a vulture waiting for roadkill, her manicured nails tapping against her designer purse. The sound echoed through my farmhouse kitchen like a death march. Mother, this is for your own good. You can't manage this place anymore. Look at you, you can barely hold that coffee cup steady. She gestured at my hands, and I noticed they weren't shaking at all. Interesting. The morning light streaming through my grandmother's lace curtains caught the greed in her eyes, making them shine like coins at the bottom of a wishing well. What exactly am I signing? My voice came out steady as bedrock, calm as still water. I set my coffee cup down with deliberate care, the porcelain making the softest click against the saucer. Through the window, I could see my Holstein cows grazing in the far pasture, black and white dots scattered across green grass that stretched to the horizon. This land had been in our family for 4 generations. The morning breeze carried the scent of fresh hay and wild honeysuckle through the screen door. Marcus pulled out his phone and started scrolling, not even looking at me. Conservatorship papers. We become your legal guardians. We handle the money, make the decisions. You get a nice little allowance to buy your romance novels and cat food. His laugh sounded like gravel in a blender. Sarah nodded eagerly, already calculating her inheritance in her head. I could practically see dollar signs reflected in her pupils. I folded my hands in my lap and smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the same expression I wore 40 years ago when I caught Harold Brennan trying to shortchange me on cattle feed. I see. And what makes you think I can't manage my own affairs? The kitchen clock ticked steadily above the stove, marking seconds like a countdown. Outside, a meadowlark sang from the fence post, oblivious to the predators circling inside this house. Are you kidding me? Sarah's voice pitched higher like fingernails on a chalkboard. She pulled out her phone and started reading from what looked like a prepared list. Last month you forgot to pay the electric bill. You haven't balanced your checkbook in years. Yesterday you called me asking how to use the microwave you've owned for a decade. Each accusation hit like a slap, designed to sting. The leather of her expensive shoes squeaked against my linoleum floor as she paced. I remembered that electric bill incident clearly. Pacific Gas and Electric had sent it to my old P.O. box instead of the house. An address I'd closed 20 years ago when I upgraded to rural delivery. I'd called them, straightened it out within an hour, and paid online like I always did. But I'd mentioned it to Sarah during our weekly phone call, just making conversation. Apparently, she'd been taking notes. The microwave question? I'd been asking about the timer function I'd never used, not how to heat food. Marcus leaned against my kitchen counter like he owned it, his bulk making my antique cabinets creak. Face facts, Mom. You're 83 years old. Dad's been gone 15 years. You live alone on 1,200 acres you can't possibly maintain. The smart thing is to sell this dump, get you into a nice facility, and secure your future. His words dripped with false concern, sweet as poisoned honey. Through the kitchen window, I watched my hired man Joe Martinez checking the water troughs in the south pasture, same as he'd done every morning for the past 8 years. This dump. I kept my voice soft, conversational. The kitchen around us told a different story. Hand-carved oak cabinets my great-grandfather built, granite countertops installed just 5 years ago, top-of-the-line appliances I'd carefully selected and learned to use. The hardwood floors gleamed with fresh polish, and every surface sparkled. This house had been featured in Country Living magazine 2 years ago as a perfect example of modern comfort meets historic charm. Sarah stopped pacing and fixed me with a look that would have curdled milk. Mother, be realistic. You haven't made a profit on this place in years. The cattle prices are terrible. The equipment is falling apart. You're hemorrhaging money trying to play farmer when you should be enjoying your golden years. Her words came fast now, rehearsed. She'd been practicing this speech. The morning sun slanted through the windows, highlighting dust motes that danced between us like tiny witnesses to this betrayal. I thought about my quarterly tax statements, locked safely in the fireproof filing cabinet upstairs. Last year's cattle sales had brought in over $400,000. The corn harvest added another $150,000. My investments, carefully managed through Merrill Lynch for the past 20 years, generated enough dividend income to cover all my living expenses twice over. But my children didn't know about those investments. They'd never asked about my financial planning, never shown interest in learning how I'd turned their father's modest life insurance payout into a substantial portfolio. Here's what's going to happen. Marcus straightened up, towering over me in my own kitchen. His shadow fell across the table like a storm cloud. You sign these papers today, voluntarily, and we handle everything quietly. Family business stays family business. Or we file for emergency guardianship, claiming you're a danger to yourself. Either way, we get control. But the first way saves everyone embarrassment. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting them. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't draw a full breath. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sarah was actually smiling now, a cold expression that reminded me of her father when he thought he was being clever. The resemblance was so strong it made my stomach turn. A danger to myself? I repeated slowly, tasting each word like medicine. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 9 times, each note reverberating through the house like a funeral bell. Outside, the meadowlarks had gone silent. Even the cattle in the distance seemed to sense the tension, lifting their heads to stare toward the house. Marcus nodded, pulling out a thick folder from his briefcase. Already documented. Sarah's been keeping records of your episodes. The confused phone calls. Forgotten appointments. That time you got lost driving to town. His fingers drummed against the table, confident now. Victory seemed within his grasp. Judge Williams is a family friend. This will be rubber-stamped by noon if we file today. My mind flashed to that day 3 months ago when I'd taken the scenic route home from town, stopping at the old covered bridge to watch the sunset paint the river gold. I'd called Sarah to share the moment, describing the beauty of the light on the water. Apparently, she'd recorded it as me being lost and confused. The forgotten appointments were medical checkups I'd rescheduled due to my busy harvest season. A normal business decision that kept my priorities straight. I stood up slowly, every joint protesting after sitting in the hard kitchen chair. The movement made both of them step back slightly, uncertainty flickering across their faces for just a moment. I need some air, I said quietly, walking toward the screen door. This is a big decision. Give me a few minutes to think. My hand rested on the door handle, feeling the cool metal warm under my palm. 5 minutes, Sarah snapped. Then you sign, or we make the call. Her voice carried the sharp edge of ultimatum. Behind her, Marcus was already speed dialing someone on his phone, probably their lawyer, ready to set the machinery in motion. The kitchen felt smaller now, walls closing in like a trap. But I had one advantage they didn't know about yet. 40 years in the cattle business had taught me something my children never learned. Sometimes the best defense looks like surrender. 2 hours later, after they'd stormed out in frustration at my refusal to decide immediately, I climbed the stairs to what used to be the master bedroom. My joints moved smoothly now, without the theatrical stiffness I'd displayed in the kitchen. Funny how quickly old age disappeared when nobody was watching. The afternoon light filtered through the lace curtains, casting intricate shadows on the hardwood floor my grandmother had walked across as a young bride. The manila folder Marcus had forgotten in his rush to leave sat open on my kitchen table downstairs, its contents more revealing than he'd intended. But it was the second folder, half hidden under Sarah's purse when she'd set it down, that told the real story. Court documents dated 3 weeks ago. Medical evaluations scheduled with doctors I'd never met. A list of assisted living facilities, with price comparisons and availability dates. They'd been planning this ambush for months. In my bedroom, I pulled out the false bottom drawer of my antique dresser, a hiding place I'd used since childhood to keep treasures safe from prying eyes. Inside lay documents my children had never seen. Investment portfolios worth over $2 million, mineral rights leases generating monthly income, and a detailed business plan I'd been working on for the past year. My fingers traced the letterhead of Morrison & Associates, the law firm that had been handling my affairs since before Marcus was born. The phone call to James Morrison took exactly 3 minutes. His familiar voice, gravelly from 60 years of courtroom battles, carried the warmth of an old friend and the sharpness of a skilled attorney. "Eleanor, I've been expecting your call. Got an interesting request from Judge Williams' office yesterday about emergency guardianship proceedings. Thought you should know." The satisfaction in his tone suggested he'd already been several steps ahead of my children's scheme. "James, how quickly can you prepare what we discussed last spring?" My voice was steady now, all pretense of frailty gone. Through my bedroom window, I could see Marcus's expensive BMW parked at the end of my driveway, engine running. He was on his phone, gesturing angrily. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, probably calculating how to redecorate my house once they took possession. The sight filled me with cold determination. "Everything's been ready for months, Eleanor. Just waiting for your signal." James chuckled, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. "Your instincts were right about this day coming. Question is, how do you want to play it? Gentle correction or full-scale warfare?" His words carried the weight of 40 years of legal battles fought and won. Outside, a hawk circled high above my pastures hunting. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. The next morning, I called Sarah with a trembling voice that would have won an Academy Award. "Sweetheart, I've been thinking about what you and Marcus said yesterday. Maybe you're right. I am getting old. This place is too much for me." The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I forced them out with just the right amount of defeated resignation. Through my kitchen window, I watched Joe Martinez repair the fence line, his steady work a comforting contrast to the deception I was about to orchestrate. "Oh, Mother!" Sarah's voice practically bubbled with triumph. "I'm so glad you're being reasonable about this. We only want what's best for you." I could hear her covering the phone, probably signaling to someone else that the plan was working. The sound of muffled celebration carried through the line like distant thunder. "Marcus is already making arrangements with Sunset Manor. They have a lovely room available with a view of their garden." Sunset Manor. I'd driven past that place last week. A concrete box surrounded by a parking lot, where old people sat in wheelchairs staring at a television that played game shows all day. The garden was 3 bushes and a bird feeder visible from a single window. My stomach clenched at the thought, but I kept my voice appropriately defeated. "That sounds nice. But I'll need a few days to get my affairs in order. Say goodbye to the animals. Pack some personal things." "Of course, Mother. Take all the time you need." Sarah's voice dripped with false sweetness. "We'll come by Friday to help you with the paperwork. Marcus is bringing his friend from the bank to handle the property transfer. Everything will be taken care of." The eagerness in her tone revealed more than she intended. They already had buyers lined up, probably for far less than the land was worth. My 1,200 acres of prime farmland would be carved up into subdivisions within a year. That afternoon, I made another call, this one to my nephew David, Sarah's younger cousin who worked as a private investigator in Denver. David had always been the family's black sheep, too honest and straightforward for his own good. His voice carried the same steady strength I remembered from his father, my beloved brother who'd died too young. Aunt Ellie? This is a surprise. How are you holding up out there? David, I need your expertise. Professionally. I outline the situation in clinical terms, keeping emotion out of it. His sharp intake of breath when I described the guardianship scheme told me everything I needed to know about his opinion of his cousin's plan. I need documentation. Financial records they think I don't have access to. Evidence of their preparations. Can you help an old lady gather some facts? Aunt Ellie, you're the sharpest person I know. If you're asking for help, there's more to this story than family drama. His tone turned professional, all business now. Give me 48 hours. I'll have everything you need to bury them so deep they'll need archaeology to find their way out. The line crackled with static, but his determination came through crystal clear. Sometimes family meant the people who stood by you, not the ones who shared your blood. Thursday morning brought Marcus to my door unannounced, his expensive shoes crunching on the gravel driveway like bones breaking. I watched him approach through my front window, noting how he moved like a man who already owned everything he saw. His confidence radiated outward in waves, but there was something else, a nervous energy that suggested not everything was going according to his plan. The morning mist clung to my pastures like ghostly fingers, and the air smelled of rain coming. Mom, we need to talk. He didn't wait for an invitation, pushing past me into the living room where my grandmother's antiques stood like silent witnesses to 4 generations of family history. His hands moved restlessly, picking up and setting down my collectibles without really seeing them. The Waterford crystal bell my mother had given me caught the morning light, casting tiny rainbows on the wall. There's been a complication with the Sunset Manor arrangement. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my expression mild and confused. What kind of complication, dear? I settled into my favorite chair, the one that faced both the window and the room, giving me a clear view of everything. Outside, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, dark and heavy with rain. The barometric pressure made my joints ache. Or maybe that was just the stress of maintaining this performance. Marcus paced like a caged animal, his bulk making my carefully arranged living room feel cramped and small. The financial disclosure requirements are more complicated than we expected. They want to see all your assets, income statements, investment portfolios, everything, before they'll approve the placement. His words came out clipped, frustrated. You'll need to sign some additional paperwork giving us access to all your accounts. The trap was tightening, but not the way he thought. I let my face crumple with worry, wringing my hands like I'd seen my grandmother do when she was genuinely distressed. Oh my, I don't really understand all that financial business. Your father always handled those things. The lies came easier now, each one a small betrayal of my true capabilities. Through the window, I could see David's rental car parked behind the barn, hidden from casual view. That's why Sarah and I need to handle this for you. Marcus stopped pacing and fixed me with what he probably thought was a reassuring smile. It looked more like a wolf showing its teeth. We'll take care of everything. You won't have to worry about complicated paperwork or confusing legal documents. Just sign where we tell you, and we'll handle the rest. His patronizing tone made my skin crawl, but I nodded along like a grateful child. The sound of gravel crunching in the driveway made us both freeze. Through the lace curtains, I could see a familiar car pulling up, James Morrison's ancient Cadillac, distinctive as a hearse in a parking lot. Marcus cursed under his breath, the vulgar word hanging in the air like smoke. Who the hell is that? His confident demeanor cracked slightly, revealing the nervous energy underneath. "Oh, that's probably Mr. Morrison from town. He comes by sometimes to check on me." I kept my voice vague, innocent, while my pulse hammered with excitement. The timing was perfect. David would be photographing everything from the barn, while James provided the legal authority I needed. He's such a nice man, always making sure I'm taking care of myself. Marcus's face went pale as James's familiar figure emerged from the car, briefcase in hand and determination in his stride. James Morrison knocked on my front door with the same authority he'd used in courtrooms for 4 decades. His silver hair caught the morning light, and his 3-piece suit looked like armor prepared for battle. Behind him, storm clouds rolled across my pastures, bringing the scent of rain and change on the wind. Marcus stood frozen in my living room, his face cycling through expressions of confusion, anger, and growing fear. "Mrs. Henderson, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." James's voice carried the formal politeness of professional interaction, but his eyes twinkled with something that looked suspiciously like anticipation. He stepped into my living room without invitation, his presence immediately changing the balance of power in the room. "I have those documents we discussed. Time-sensitive legal matters that require your immediate attention." I played my part perfectly, fluttering my hands with nervous confusion. "Oh my, Mr. Morrison. I don't really understand legal documents very well. My son Marcus is here. Maybe he could help explain things." The performance felt surreal, but Marcus's expression of barely controlled panic made every word worth it. His expensive suit couldn't hide the sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "Actually, these documents are quite straightforward." James opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency, pulling out folders thick with official-looking papers. Standard property management authorizations, investment portfolio updates, and some mineral rights documentation that requires your personal signature. Each word hit Marcus like a physical blow. His face went from pale to gray, then to a sickly green that matched the storm clouds outside. Marcus cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Morrison, I don't think we've met. I'm Mrs. Henderson's son, and I've been helping her with her financial affairs." His voice carried forced authority, but the tremor underneath revealed his growing desperation. "Perhaps you could explain exactly what kind of legal matters you're discussing with my mother." James's smile could have frozen water in July. "I'm afraid attorney-client privilege prevents me from discussing Mrs. Henderson's private affairs with unauthorized parties." The emphasis on unauthorized hit its target perfectly. Marcus actually stepped backward, his confidence crumbling like a house of cards in a hurricane. Through the window, I could see David moving carefully around the property, his camera capturing everything. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 11 times, each note echoing through the house like a countdown to Judgment Day. Outside, the first drops of rain began pattering against the windows, and the wind picked up, rattling the old glass in its frames. I signed paper after paper with shaking hands that weren't shaking at all, while Marcus watched his carefully constructed plan dissolve before his eyes. "There's just one more signature required," James said, pulling out a final document with official seals and ribbons. "This one establishes the irrevocable trust we discussed last spring. Very important for tax purposes and estate planning." Marcus made a strangled sound, somewhere between a gasp and a groan. The trap was closing, and he was finally beginning to understand exactly who was caught inside it. Friday morning arrived with the clarity that follows a storm. The rain had washed the air clean, and everything sparkled with fresh possibilities. Marcus and Sarah pulled into my driveway precisely at 9 o'clock, their faces set with the grim determination of people who believed they were about to claim their inheritance. Sarah carried a new leather portfolio, probably filled with documents from their lawyer. Marcus had his phone ready, likely to call their bank contact the moment I signed the papers. I met them at the kitchen table, the same battlefield where this had all begun. But today the manila folders belonged to me. James Morrison sat beside me, his presence as solid and reassuring as bedrock. Across the table, David had arranged his camera equipment with professional precision, ready to document whatever came next. The morning light streaming through my grandmother's lace curtains seemed brighter today, illuminated with the promise of justice. "Mother, what's all this?" Sarah's voice carried a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there 3 days ago. Her manicured fingernails tapped nervously against her portfolio, and her eyes darted from James to David like a cornered animal looking for escape routes. "We agreed this would be a simple family matter. Why do you need lawyers and photographers?" Marcus slammed his hand on the table, making my coffee cups jump. "This is ridiculous. Mom, we're trying to help you, and you're treating us like criminals. Send these people away so we can handle this privately." But his bluster couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. He'd finally realized that his elderly, confused mother had somehow outmaneuvered him, and the knowledge sat on his shoulders like a lead blanket. "Actually, let's start with some clarity about Mrs. Henderson's current mental state." James opened his first folder with the theatrical flair of a master attorney. Yesterday, she successfully completed comprehensive cognitive testing with Dr. Patricia Wells, the same neuropsychologist Judge Williams uses for competency evaluations. The report he displayed bore official seals and signatures, proof that my mind was as sharp as ever. Sarah's face went white as fresh snow. "That's impossible. She can't even remember to pay her electric bill." Her voice cracked on the last word, desperation bleeding through her carefully constructed facade. Beside her, Marcus had gone very still, the way dangerous animals do when they finally realize they're the ones being hunted. "Interesting you should mention that electric bill." David spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the professional neutrality of someone presenting evidence. "The payment records show it was sent to a closed P.O. box by error, and Mrs. Henderson corrected the problem within hours of receiving notification. Hardly the action of someone suffering from dementia." His camera clicked softly, capturing their expressions of dawning horror. I stood up slowly, letting the mask of frailty fall away like an old coat I no longer needed. The transformation was physical. My spine straightened, my voice strengthened, and my movements became fluid and purposeful. "Children, let me show you what real confusion looks like." James handed me a thick folder, and I spread its contents across the table like cards in a winning hand. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, and mineral rights certificates painted a picture my children had never imagined. 2.7 million in liquid assets. I read aloud, watching their faces cycle through disbelief, rage, and fear. Another 800,000 in various investment accounts. And this property, all 1,200 acres, recently appraised at $14,000 per acre. Marcus made a choking sound, and Sarah swayed in her chair as if she might faint. The numbers hit them like physical blows, each one destroying another piece of their carefully constructed fantasy. But that's not the best part. My voice carried the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, a puzzle solved after years of patient work. James handed me another folder, this one sealed with red wax like an official proclamation. 3 weeks ago, I established an irrevocable trust. Every asset, every investment, every acre of this land, all protected from any future legal challenges or guardianship proceedings. Sarah found her voice first, though it came out as a strangled whisper. "You can't do that. We're your children. We deserve." The words died as she saw my expression. 40 years of cattle trading had taught me to recognize desperation, and I was looking at it now across my kitchen table. Her designer clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide the ugly truth underneath. She'd been counting on my death to fund her lifestyle. Marcus struggled to his feet, his face purple with rage. "This is insane. You're a crazy old woman, and we'll fight this in court. Judge Williams will see right through this charade." But his threats carried no weight now, hollow as empty promises. David's camera captured every word, every gesture, building an unshakable record of their true intentions. Judge Williams received some interesting documentation yesterday. James's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Complete financial records showing Mrs. Henderson's competency, along with recorded phone conversations in which you and your sister discuss plans to have her declared incompetent. Turns out David here has quite a talent for electronic surveillance. The admission hit them like a thunderbolt, draining the color from their faces. I walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the land that had sheltered 4 generations of my family. The morning sun painted the pastures gold, and my cattle grazed peacefully in the distance. The trust benefits several charities dedicated to elder abuse prevention. David gets a substantial grant for his investigative work. Joe Martinez and his family receive lifetime employment and a pension plan. Each word was a nail in the coffin of their dreams. "What about us?" Sarah's voice broke on the question, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and disappointment, the tantrum of a spoiled child who'd finally been told no. "We're your children. You can't just cut us out completely." I turned from the window to face them both, these strangers who happened to share my blood. "You each receive exactly what you valued me at, $1. It's all laid out in my will, which Judge Williams has already accepted as legally binding." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the tick of the grandfather clock and the distant lowing of cattle. Marcus lunged toward me, his hands reaching for my throat, but David stepped between us with the fluid motion of someone trained in personal protection. "I wouldn't recommend that course of action," David said calmly, his camera still recording. "Assault on an elderly person carries serious jail time, and you're already facing potential fraud charges." The fight went out of Marcus all at once, leaving him deflated like a punctured balloon. Sarah sobbed into her hands, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. They'd gambled everything on my weakness, my confusion, my need for their approval. Instead, they'd found strength they never knew existed, wrapped in the quiet dignity of a woman who'd spent 83 years learning how to survive. 6 months later, I stood in the same kitchen where my children had tried to steal my life, but everything had changed. The morning light still filtered through my grandmother's lace curtains, but now it illuminated a space filled with purpose and joy instead of fear and betrayal. The local newspaper lay folded on the table, its headline reading, "Henderson Trust awards first grants to Elder Protection Services." My phone rang with the distinctive tone I'd assigned to good news. David calling from Denver with updates on the cases he was building against other families who preyed on elderly relatives. His investigative firm, funded by my trust, had already prevented 12 fraudulent guardianships and helped dozens of seniors reclaim their stolen assets. The satisfaction in his voice when he described their victories warmed my heart like sunshine after rain. Joe Martinez knocked on my back door, carrying fresh eggs from the chickens we'd added to the farm operation. His wife Maria had started a small business making artisanal cheeses from our dairy cows, and their children played in the same fields where I'd once chased fireflies as a girl. The sound of their laughter carried on the morning breeze, a promise that this land would continue nurturing families long after I was gone. "Mrs. Henderson, the reporter from the state capitol wants to interview you again." Joe's weathered face creased with pride as he handed me the eggs, still warm from the nest. "Says your story is inspiring other older folks to fight back against their families trying to steal from them." The irony wasn't lost on me. My children's greed had turned me into an accidental advocate for elder rights. Through my window, I could see the new sign at the end of my driveway. Henderson Educational Farm, teaching sustainable agriculture and elder empowerment. College students came every weekend to learn about cattle ranching and crop rotation, but they also learned about financial planning, legal rights, and the importance of standing up to bullies. The trust funded their education, creating a legacy that would outlast any inheritance my children might have squandered. Marcus and Sarah had disappeared from my life as completely as if they'd never existed. The last I'd heard, Marcus was facing bankruptcy after several failed business ventures, while Sarah had moved to another state to avoid the social shame of her exposed greed. They'd sent no birthday cards, no holiday greetings, no apologies. Their silence was the most precious gift they'd ever given me. As the sun climbed higher, painting my pastures with golden light, I poured myself another cup of coffee and opened my latest letter from the State Attorney General's office. They wanted to use my case as a model for new legislation protecting seniors from family financial abuse. The thought that my ordeal might prevent other families from experiencing such betrayal filled me with quiet satisfaction. I walked out onto my front porch, breathing in the sweet scent of honeysuckle and fresh hay. At 83 years old, I felt more alive than I had in decades. My children had tried to bury me in a nursing home, but instead they'd awakened a strength I'd forgotten I possessed. Sometimes the greatest gift comes disguised as the cruelest betrayal. The meadowlarks sang from the fence posts, welcoming another day on land that would remain free and productive for generations to come. I'd learned that family wasn't always about blood. Sometimes it was about the people who stood by you when the world tried to tear you down. And sometimes, just sometimes, the old lady with the coffee cup and trembling hands turned out to be the most dangerous person in the room. In the distance, thunder rumbled across the plains, bringing the promise of rain for my pastures and new growth for everything we'd planted. I smiled and went back inside to plan tomorrow's lessons, knowing that some storms bring destruction, but others bring the exact change the world needs most.